at 323-577-5562. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. From traditional funeral services to memorials to direct cremation, pre-needs, and more. Call Charlotte White at Exquisite Family Mortuary for Southern hospitality in Southern California. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. Exquisite Family Mortuary is located nearby in Inglewood, California. Exquisite Family Mortuary, where your loved one becomes our loved one.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting. A movement of people, it's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the poor where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify when you and God in time are best aligned.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right.
We gonna get it right. We sure are. You are listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. And look, if you're on the Spill platform, if you're on Substack, if you're on Instagram, if you're on all the platforms, same handle, Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. Also, have you downloaded the KBLA app to listen to us live? Or on demand, or simply just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. I want to just remind folks about our special initiative, Fired But Not Forgotten, the Testimony Project. We are well aware that these mass layoffs, these mass firings across the federal government are impacting so many of our friends and neighbors and family members. And we want to make sure we're doing our part to lift up your stories, to tell your stories with compassion, with integrity, for the record, in the spirit of inviting you to share your testimony. We are calling all federal workers, particularly Black federal workers, to send us an email at info@smileyAudiomedia.com. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com to share your story. You can share it with us on the record or off the record. You can also utilize the KBLA app, the open mic feature on the KBLA app, to record your story and just press send. We want to hear from you. We know there are a number of folks who have been impacted by these mass layoffs, and the whole idea of that good government job, that has allowed so many of our folks to make it into the middle class, so many of our folks to be able to purchase a home or send their kids off to college. So many people in our communities who found their way into the middle class because of that reliable, stable, good government job that's now under siege. We want to hear from you. And so don't be shy. Now it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. Kicking us off, CBS News reporting that House Speaker Johnson is eyeing big cuts to Medicaid. And in his Louisiana district, it is a lifeline. Make no mistake about it. When DeSoto Regional Health System took out $36 million in loans last year to renovate a rural hospital that opened in 1952. Officials were banking on its main funding source remaining stable. You know what their main funding source was? Medicaid, the joint federal state health program for low income people and the disabled. But those dollars, that's right, you guessed it, those dollars are now in jeopardy as President Trump and the GOP controlled Congress move to shrink the nearly $900 billion health program that covers more than 1 in 5 Americans. The DeSoto CEO, Todd Epler, said that Medicaid cuts could make it harder for his hospital to repay loans and for patients to access care. One of the decision makers is certain representative in Congress, House Speaker Mike Johnson, who lives about 35 miles north. He said he knows the Republican leader and his staff understand hospital plight. The mother of Johnson's chief of staff is CEO of a rural hospital in the district. What? Last year, nearly 290,000 people in Johnson's district were enrolled in Medicaid, about 38% of the total population, according to data compiled by KFF. About 118,000 of them are in the program thanks to the Affordable Care Act, which allowed states, including Louisiana, to expand Medicaid to cover low-income adults, many of whom were working in low-paying jobs that didn't provide health insurance. And so, you know, the House Speaker knows. He knows in no uncertain terms. He knows right there in his district what this nearly $900 billion cut to Medicaid would mean to folks in his state, in his district. So if you live in that district, you better pick up the phone. If you live in his district, you know, you should reach out and set up a meeting, do all the things. That is your representative. Make your voice heard. Speaking of Medicaid, just sticking with Medicaid for a second. The New York Times is reporting that there are 3 states that are especially stuck if Congress cuts Medicaid. Now, I was just talking about the state of Louisiana, the home state to House Speaker Mike Johnson. But if congressional Republicans go through with some of the deep Medicaid cuts that they are considering, the New York Times reports that 3 states would be left in an especially tight bind. South Dakota, Missouri, and Oklahoma have state constitutions requiring that they participate in Medicaid expansion, part of Obamacare that expanded the health program for the poor to millions of adults. If Republicans choose to make this projected budget reduction by cutting into Medicaid expansion, the other 37 states and DC that participate in the expansion could stop covering working class adults. 9 states have laws explicitly requiring them to stop Medicaid expansion or make significant changes if the federal share of spending drops. And so, you know, if they cut Medicaid, this is going to be a mess. But what do the U.S. senators and the representatives from those states, what are they going to do? And so these are additional folks that you may want to reach out to in your outreach to prevent these severe cuts to a program that is a lifeline to so many. Again, those states are South Dakota, Missouri, and Oklahoma. Moving along, a Trump voter's wife freed after 49 days in ICE custody. USA Today reporting that Bradley Bartell, see, he voted for President Trump, and a month later, ICE arrested his Peruvian wife. But now, after 49 days in the detention, Camila Munoz is free. Bartell was waiting for her outside in the 90-degree heat after an immigration judge released her on bond on Friday. You may be wondering what he said. Well, the jail captain She opened the door. Munoz, 26, was standing there. Bradley was standing there sweating. And Bradley says it was a huge relief to be able to have her out here with me again. It was just a huge weight off of my shoulders. What about the folks that aren't so lucky? What about them? So you voted for this. You voted for the person who said that he was going to do what he did. Your wife gets swept up and held by ICE for 49 days and released, and you feel the weight off of your shoulders, but it's still happening to other families. See, this is the psychology that I'm trying to understand. It's the psychology of as long as it doesn't affect me. And there's nothing about that is grounded in community. There's nothing about that keeps anybody safe. Nothing about that. Trump's immigration crackdown is the new norm and will continue to wreak havoc on American families and instill fear among immigrants. This is what folks like David Rosa, a Louisiana immigration attorney representing Munoz, has said. He went on to say there are tons of people we've been representing the past couple of months who under previous administrations would have had zero issues with adjusting their status. There you have it. There you have it. You know about Real ID? You have your Real ID? I think I have my Real ID. My mom has been bringing this up again and again and again. She's been bringing this up for, I feel like, the past 3-4 years. And so finally, we are coming up on this deadline. Just a few thoughts on what you need to know about the looming Real ID deadline for domestic flights and airport security deadline. 20 years in the making is a month away, and authorities are urging the public to take it seriously. Washington Post. The Washington Post is reporting that after years of delays, the Transportation Security Administration will begin enforcing the Real ID rule May 7th. Travelers who fly domestically will need to provide a compliant license or acceptable alternative when they go through security checkpoints. According to federal documents, about 56% of identification credentials in circulation complied with the standards as of January 2024. TSA spokespeople said last week that 80% of travelers have been going through security checkpoints with Real IDs or approved alternatives. Between 2 and 3 million people go through TSA on most days, and so don't play around. I would hate for you to have planned out a really nice trip someplace nice. You got your sandals on, you got your fresh cut, you're getting ready to get on to go through security, to get on the plane and go somewhere nice, and they won't let you through because your ID is not compliant. Don't let it happen to you. So Google, Real ID, and make sure that you're compliant, because we're heading into the summer months, and we want to keep it cool. Keep it cool. When we come forward, we are delighted to welcome Emmy-winning journalist Gianna Tobani, who has faced some of the world's most dangerous people. I'm talking about ISIS fighters and cartel hitmen and sex traffickers. She's even survived being hit with a Russian date rape drug in a Moscow hotel. Well, she has lived to tell it in her new book, The Volunteer, The Failure of the Death Penalty in America. She is telling probably one of the most important stories that she's had to share yet. And we are pleased to host her here on A More Perfect Union. When we come forward, Gianna Tobani, you're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. Before the fire, Altadena was a real-life Wakanda. A thriving black oasis just 15 miles from downtown Los Angeles. 80% Black residents were homeowners, building intergenerational wealth against the odds. It was a hub of Black-owned businesses, churches, and cultural institutions. It stood as a symbol of Black resilience and economic independence. Then, in a matter of hours, it was gone. The fire tore through homes, swallowed businesses, and left behind a painful void. But was it just an unstoppable act of nature, or was negligence involved? Did officials ignore early warning signs? Were the response efforts delayed or insufficient? What role, if any, did corporate or government failures play? Survivors are demanding answers. Don't miss our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall. The Eaton-Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting, on Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center, 1081 North Fair Oaks in Pasadena. Join Dominic DePrima, Nii-Quartelai Quartey, James Farr, Tavis Smiley, and a panel of survivors, community leaders, and experts as we commemorate day 100 since the wildfires flared up. And we discuss where we go from here. It's KBLA's Eaton-Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting Town Hall, Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center in Pasadena. Light refreshments to follow. Admission is free, but sign-up is required at our KBLA1580.com website. The first 100 attendees will receive a complimentary air purifier. This is a community call to action, brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Thy ticket, Lady Jennifer of Coolidge.
Well, many thanks, good sir. Hereeth my Discover card.
They accept Discover at Renaissance fairs?
Yeah, they do here. Discover is accepted at the places I love to shop. Getteth with the times.
With the times? You're playing the lute.
Yeah, and it sounds pretty good, right?
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests as we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really pleased to welcome my next guest, Emmy-winning journalist Gianna Tobani. She's faced some of the world's most dangerous people. I'm talking about ISIS fighters, cartel hitmen, sex traffickers. She even survived being hit with a Russian date rape drug in a Moscow hotel. This is serious business. But she's here to share her new book, The Volunteer, The Failure of the Death Penalty in America and One Inmate's Quest to Die with Dignity. Gianna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
And so let's talk about why, some are calling this book representative of really the most intense year you've had yet, even considering everything I just outlined.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, listen, with most stories, we do an interview, 2, 3, maybe 4, and then the story airs and that's the end of it. In this case, I was talking to this death row inmate for more than a year during, the craziest year of his life, with, his story having so many twists and turns that even after our documentary aired on HBO, he kept calling me, I kept answering, and I just couldn't help but continue the conversation and continue recording our conversations because I understood how what was happening to him was representative of how broken our criminal justice system is, and also certainly the capital punishment system in our country is.
And why? What is it about this gentleman's story that really reeled you in? You have such an extraordinary body of work. I'm sure no shortage of assignments, particularly overseas. What was it about this domestic story that really reeled you in?
Well, he was unusual in many ways. Oftentimes, when we're talking about the death penalty in our country, we're focusing on wrongful convictions and stories that include, frankly, more sympathetic characters. And Scott Dozier was convicted of murder in 2 trials. He was not really pleading his innocence. Instead, he was volunteering for execution. So he wrote the judge a letter and he said, let's get this over with. You sentenced me to death. Let's see you do it. And the state then had to find a way to carry out the sentence. Nevada hadn't executed anybody in more than 10 years. And the political will just seemed to not be there in that state at the time. Not to mention, it was incredibly hard to get the execution drugs. And so I thought it was really interesting that you have an inmate who was volunteering for execution, and then you had a state who presumably that was their goal as well, the execution, and yet he was still alive. And they could not find a way to do it. And to me, that was a sort of nuanced and underreported reason for how broken this system is.
But before you took on this story, had you ever worked on any, death penalty related stories before?
This story it was in 2017, and it was the start of my reporting on the death penalty. So I had done stories on the criminal justice system, but since talking to Dozier in 2017, I started reporting on it more frequently and kind of have been stunned by the things that I've found. I'll give you one example, but in 2022, the Oklahoma Attorney General scheduled the executions of 60% of their death row within 2 years. I mean, it was astonishing. And so I started to look into, who these people were, who he wanted to execute. And of course, I noticed great bias. We know there's great racial bias in the death penalty system. And, you find these mitigating factors that seem to be common denominators in many of the stories. But what was most surprising to me is that one inmate after the next had some kind of severe mental illness or intellectual disability. And I sort of I honestly, I just couldn't believe it because of how common it was in their profiles as I was reading about them.
Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, there are so many very shocking and dirty truths about the criminal justice system. But this seems to be one of the shocking, really, dirty, sickening truths that folks in positions of power seem to look away from. The fact that a lot of folks that are on death row, to your point, are suffering from some form of mental illness. We know about the racial bias. What is it that continues to incentivize folks in positions of power, influence, and authority to look away? I mean, the criminal justice system as it is, it is doing what it is designed to do until we design it to do something different.
No, I mean, I think that's a great point. I think that in a lot of counties in this country, there is a lot to gain politically for district attorneys and prosecutors by racking up these death sentences, even when executions aren't being carried out. So as an example, in Los Angeles County, their new district attorney, DA Hochman, he has asked his prosecutors to start seeking the death penalty in what he calls rare and severe cases. There is a moratorium on the death penalty in California. Death row has been dismantled. There is literally no way to execute people, and yet he continues to try to dish out these sentences. And this is this sort of hypocrisy, what many have called a political charade. What's the point of handing out these sentences when there is no practice in the state at the moment? And that's what you see in a lot of states, including in Nevada. And then, of course, there are, a few red states that carry out the vast majority of these executions, going as far as to re-legalize the firing squad, the electric chair, the gas chamber, these methods of old, so that if they cannot get the drugs, they still have a way of carrying it out. And look, I think in those states, because the political makeup is different, I think it also is politically advantageous for them to actually carry out the executions, for them to show, frankly, the Trump base that, look, we are tough on crime, or that's what their base thinks tough on crime means. And so we really will follow through with these. I think folks, for the most part, they're looking toward their next election. And I think that there is a lot for them to gain by following through with these.
I mean, my goodness, it turns the stomach. It turns the stomach, and I really want to thank you for highlighting the LA County District Attorney, the new LA County District Attorney, who is engaging a lot of tough talk around the death penalty. But it's important that our leaders, learners, and listeners know that tough talk doesn't match what the law is in the state of California. So don't fall for the okie doke. When we come forward, Gianna, I want to talk to you about your decision to really humanize Dozier's life, his extraordinary life from birth. I want to learn why you decided to do it the way that you did it, and what you're hoping readers will take from his life as we think about the death penalty, as we think about real criminal justice reform, as we might even think about the abolition of the prison system at large. When we come forward, more with Gianna Tobani. She is the author of The Volunteer, The Failure of the Death Penalty in America, and One Inmate's Quest to Die with Dignity. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Reverend Al Sharpton is calling for a boycott of Pepsi over its rollback of DEI goals. He gave the company 21 days to reverse course, saying, quote, "We won't fund our own exclusion," end quote. Stocks closed mostly lower after a volatile day on Wall Street as President Trump's threat to raise tariffs on China added to investor uncertainty. Daily Pay is suing Black New York Attorney General Letitia James to block a potential lawsuit claiming its early paycheck service is an illegal loan. The company says its $3.49 fee is not debt and argues James's actions could hurt working class users. And Black Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown is suing the Trump administration with 20 other attorneys general to stop the shutdown of key federal agencies, including one that supports minority-owned businesses. They say dismantling these services hurts underserved communities and violates the Constitution. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Downtown LA, it's a crash on the 101 southbound before Los Angeles Street. Second lane from the left has been blocked. Delays away from the 5. Also, in Norco, we're heading out to the 15 northbound before 2nd Street. A wreck landed in the left lane. That drive is still moving away from just about the 91 freeway. Also in Riverside, a stall on the 60 eastbound at the 215-91. Out of lanes now, but delays are loading up away from Valley Way. And Eagle Rock, a crash on the 2 northbound before Avenue 36, Verdugo Road. Left lane's blocked, delays from Fletcher Drive.
Why do we grill to order at Waba Grill? Because it's just better for you. And our Asian-inspired menu has high-quality proteins that are healthier for you. Download the Waba Rewards app or order online at wabagrill.com. Waba Grill, it's for you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Mookie Betts, the only African-American player on the Dodgers roster, joined his teammates Monday morning at the White House for a celebration with President Trump. Trump invited the Dodgers to honor the team for their World Series championship last season. When the invitation was extended to the Dodgers in March, Betts said he was undecided if he would attend the ceremony. During Trump's first term in 2019, Betts boycotted a White House visit with the Boston Red Sox after they won the World Series. Betts said he joined his teammates Monday morning because he did not want to be a distraction. During the 20-minute ceremony, Dodgers pitcher Clayton Kershaw gave Trump a Dodgers jersey with the number 47. The Dodgers White House visit drew mixed reactions from Dodgers fans because of Trump's controversial policies affecting minorities around the country. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At Exquisite Family Mortuary, we know how overwhelming it can be planning a meaningful farewell for your loved one. Secure your peace of mind by calling Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. From traditional funeral services to memorials to direct cremation pre-needs and more. Call Charlotte White at Exquisite Family Mortuary for Southern hospitality in Southern California. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. Exquisite Family Mortuary is located nearby in Inglewood, California. Exquisite Family Mortuary, where your loved one becomes our loved one.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me!
National news of consequence, informed opinion,
and analysis beyond the headlines.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and here in conversation with Gianna Tobani, as she is author of The Volunteer, The Failure of the Death Penalty in America and One Inmate's Quest to Die with Dignity. Gianna, for folks who are less familiar, this all started when you wrote a letter to death row inmate Scott Dozier, and in 2017, hoping to get him to interview for an HBO documentary before his execution date. And word is you never expected or intended to have your lives intertwined like this till the end of time.
Yeah, I mean, look, originally I was looking to interview a death row inmate who had been wrongfully convicted, and who had some of these mitigating factors that fuel this deeply unjust system that is very much a part of our culture here in the U.S. And it just so happens that Scott Dozier was the person who had the execution date coming up, which allowed me to get access to him in the prison. And so, yes, it was kind of an unlikely situation. And, what I began to realize was that, aside from him being a powerful representation of this broken system, I found also that, oftentimes we shine a light on, nonviolent offenders, people who are wrongfully convicted, which is incredibly important. But sometimes we forget about violent offenders, and people who are guilty of their crimes. And I think that became like a great kind of professional challenge for me, because I do feel that those folks also deserve our compassion and also deserve our humanity. And I don't think that the state, no matter how brutal the crime is, should be able to mistreat, individuals who are violent offenders. I believe in a humane criminal justice system. And so I felt that if I could, convince the public and viewers that, Scott Dozier was also worthy of our humanity, that would be a good thing. And so, his story definitely, I follow it birth until death in this book. And there were moments where I felt insecure about my skepticism as a journalist, because I felt, man, should I be laughing at this guy's jokes? Should I be feeling any ounce of compassion for him? As his story progressed, I came to find that, I felt and he felt that he was being put in deeply inhumane conditions. And that became sort of the driving force behind my reporting.
You really made the decision to humanize Scott in a really dignified way. And media isn't always good at doing that. In fact, there's a really cool TED Talk that you delivered not long ago that offered a critique and of the media industry and some of the limitations of media. Talk to us about your love for documentary filmmaking and what it is that you believe you can do through long form documentaries that you couldn't do when you were in the news business.
It's such a great question. I think that it is such a privilege to be able to have the space that you get in a book or in a documentary to tell a story, as opposed to, 90 seconds on a news network, evening news. I mean, morning news. It's just so hard to tell a story in that amount of time, and particularly a complicated story. Most of these stories are complicated, and in network news, we simplify them, right? Everything is very black and white, and that's just not the world we live in. And so when you have the space, that a documentary or a book gives you, you can really dig into the nuances. And I think, as a result of that, you can really be more honest about what's happening here. It can both be true that someone convicted, a violent crime and possibly created generational trauma for another family, and also has some redeeming qualities. And maybe we should not just ignore and lock the cell door and throw the key away. Maybe there's something we can learn from this person. Maybe there's a reason they committed those crimes. And I'm not even talking about Scott Dozier. I interview a lot of death row inmates for this book. And, there were people who I walked onto death row emotional about how horrific their crimes were, crimes against children. I could never imagine feeling anything other than vitriol for this person. And then I sat down with them and I had a conversation and I learned about what they experienced as a child, and everything became more complicated. And I found that actually somehow, and I'm a parent, and somehow I could feel compassion for this person in front of me. And so I could never do that in a short form environment. I have to have the space in order to tell that longer, more complicated story.
And speaking of longer, more complicated stories, Gianna, when I was preparing for our conversation, I was flabbergasted to learn that pharmaceutical companies have said that they won't sell their drugs to prisons. And so if that's the case, help our leaders, learners, and listeners understand, how do prisons get the drugs to carry out these lethal injection executions?
This is a fascinating part of the book. I mean, I really enjoyed researching it because I started, I'd be reading scenes and writing scenes and thinking, man, is this Breaking Bad? Am I reading about Narcos? And then I'd remind myself, oh no, this is American prison officials who are dealing drugs in order to carry out these executions. So in the last several years, they would go overseas, they'd go to India, they'd find small drug sellers and they'd say, hey, we're just using it for, not executions. And they'd get drugs imported illegally that were not FDA approved. In some cases, the DEA would stop and confiscate the drugs, or the FDA would, but then release it to the prisons, and they would use those drugs in executions. In some cases, you'd have prison officials from state to state, and they'd be doing these deals, these literal drug deals in parking lots in America, and then use those drugs in executions. I mean, my mind was blown by some of these stories. But this is happening in modern day America. And now, these prisons are starting to get a little more savvy to the process, and they have found compounding pharmacies, which are small neighborhood pharmacies, which we all probably drive by on the highway 5 times a day. And these are pharmacies that they make sort of custom drug combinations for instance, people who have allergies, right? But you can also go to them and say, hey, could you just give me some sodium thiopentol, for instance? And they'll give it to you. And sometimes the prisons, I think, are not telling them what they're going to use it for, or they're lying. But other times, I think they are. They are telling them, and they just have this relationship where the prison pays an extraordinary price. A state recently paid $900,000 for a new package of execution drugs. And so, they have this quiet relationship where it's a sort of, you don't say anything, we don't say anything. And that's how they're getting the drugs.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm outdone by that. I'm sure there are a number of folks listening that feel the same. That pharmaceutical companies, are a part of this. They're a part of this. And so I've got to ask you in our remaining minute, Gianna, what gives you hope for any sort of reform to the way we think about, the way we approach death row in this country? What gives you any hope for any semblance of criminal justice reform in this country in light of recent events?
Well, I love that question. I mean, I think that anytime, we have folks in power who are unsettling, who are abusive with their power, who are unethical with their power, and you know where I'm going with this. I think what we also see is a reaction to that. And we see resistance, and we see people who stand up and fight against that and fight for their own values. And that's a story as old as time. And we are in that moment right now. And yes, that applies to, I think, criminal justice reform and the death penalty, but it also applies to much more than that, as we saw very clearly in the last few days in this country. And so, I'm hopeful that, even though we haven't seen much protest against the death penalty in the last several years, I'm hopeful that now that it is being pushed in our face, as of recent, I'm hopeful that there will be folks who will stand up against it and finally start to protest that they do not want this done in their name.
Her new book, The Volunteer: The Failure of the Death Penalty in America and One Inmate's Quest to Die with Dignity, on sale now. You can get it in hardcover. Went on sale on my birthday, April 1st.
I like it.
And it is a important read for folks that are feeling like they're in the wilderness and aren't sure where they want to challenge. What they want to challenge and where they want to channel their time, their talent, their treasure in terms of investing in reform efforts. You might get some good ideas reading this book, The Volunteer. And so my thanks to Gianna Tabani for joining us. Please come back again soon.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I feel so alone. I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like this.
When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help. You are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm. If you own a timeshare, don't miss this public service announcement from Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group.
If you receive an unsolicited phone call or mail piece to discuss selling, renting, or especially canceling your timeshare, don't fall for it. If you really want out of your timeshare, hang the phone up immediately or throw that mail piece in the trash and contact your timeshare resort or Wesley Financial Group for assistance with your timeshare. As the only Inc. 500 timeshare cancellation company, our knowledge, experience, and results has made Wesley a trusted resource for over 40,000 families we've helped get out of their timeshare. Give us a call and I'll send you our timeshare exit information kit free with the straight facts about your timeshare and all of your options for cancellation.
Call for your free info kit, 800-511-2112. That's 800-511-2112. 800-511-2112.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Did y'all get a gander at the Forbes list? That's right, the richest Black people in the world. Now, according to Forbes' annual billionaire list, Oprah Winfrey, Jay-Z, Rihanna, and LeBron James are not the only folks on the most famous people in the world list, but they are some of the wealthiest. Forbes' annual billionaire list just dropped, and out of 3,028 people, 23 different Black people with a combined worth of $96 billion made the cut. Of the 23 richest Black people in the world, Nigerian businessman Aliko Dangote, I think I pronounced that right, who founded the Dangote Group, landed to the top spot with a net worth of $23.9 billion. Winfrey, Hove, Riri, and James aren't too far behind, though, with the exception of Jay-Z, they're each tied with others on the list. Regardless, Winfrey remains the richest Black woman in the world. The group includes a mix of women and men in a wide range of industries, including hotels and entertainment, music, IT, oil, sugar, healthcare, basketball, cosmetics, and more. The authors of the list, which began in 1987. Did you know the list was that old? I didn't know it was that old. Or I should say, I didn't know it was that young. I actually thought it was much older than that. But they used stock prices and exchange rates from March 7th, 2025 to compile this year's list, which grew by 247 from more than a year ago. The billionaires also have even more billions than they did last year. According to the publication, all 38 have a combined wealth of $16.1 trillion, which is nearly $2 trillion more than 2024. Now, look, there's some people that are going to read this and say, okay, that's great. We have more Black billionaires than we ever have in the history of the world, and they are richer than they have ever been in the history of the world. But I think the other side of that is, I think part of how people become billionaires is also the tax system. And last time I checked, the United States had more billionaires than any other country in any other part of the world. And so part of what at least helps to make billionaires even richer is the tax code. And so, during the campaign, folks were talking about making sure that the millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. Well, part of what happens when folks don't pay their fair share, the billionaires and millionaires get richer. And so that's the other side of it. So there's two sides to this coin. On one hand, we can celebrate, okay, more Black billionaires. But if your brain works like mine, you ask the question, well, how did they get to be billionaires? And in addition to their talent, in addition to their business savvy, the tax system in the United States also helps to keep billionaires rich, if not make them even richer. Finally, in other news, they left their DEI roles, but guess what? Trump still fired them. NPR reporting on Mahari Stanek, who had just started a job in the Office of Personnel Management, focusing on bringing more engineers, more technologists, more scientists into the government. Sherelle Pyatt helped to resolve personnel disputes, including through mediation at the Department of Homeland Security. Jessica Swan's position at the Department of Education was overseeing grants to help some 5 million children in the U.S. learn English. You know what they have in common? Each of them brought years of experience to their roles. Each of them was removed from that position soon after President Trump signed not one but two executive orders ending diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility efforts in the federal government. That's despite the fact that they weren't working in DEIA offices. They weren't working in these offices at the time of their dismissal. They contend that their jobs don't conflict with those executive orders. Instead, they believe that they are among hundreds and possibly thousands of federal employees targeted because of their past involvement with government diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility programs and initiatives, or perhaps because the Trump administration merely associated them with the concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Many of these workers say that they've never received an explanation for why they're being fired. Imagine that you're not being fired because you violate the new policy or the new guidance. You're being fired because, well, people associate you with the thing that the guidance says you shouldn't do anymore, the thing that the memo says you shouldn't do anymore. Now, Stanek, who uses the they, them pronouns, is asking for their job back. They are named appellant in a complaint filed with the independent agency tasked with hearing personnel disputes within the federal government. And the complaint alleges that Stanek was among a pool of federal employees unlawfully fired by the Trump administration as a punishment for their, quote, perceived political affiliations. Swan and Pyatt have both been told that they will be terminated in the coming months. They plan to join the complaint once they're separated from the government. That's what's happening in our government. That's what's happening in our name. As Trump and his billionaire advisor, Elon Musk, have swiftly made good on their promises to dramatically slash the federal government, legal challenges, they've piled up. And so have warnings that the government is losing talented, experienced civil servants who have faithfully served the American public through multiple administrations. Under federal law, government employees generally can't take their personnel disputes directly to court. Instead, they must work through the Merit System Protection Board, an agency set up by Congress to hear such complaints. This is what's happening in our government. This is what's happening in our name. And so here at KBLA Talk 1580, I want to remind you that we launched an initiative called Fired But Not Forgotten, the Testimony Project, where we are encouraging fired federal workers under the threat of being fired, particularly Black federal workers. We want to encourage you to reach out to us. You can send us an email at info@smileyaudiomedia.com. That's info@smileyaudiomedia.com. And we just might invite you to share your story right here on our airwaves, because your testimony is too important. It's too important. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. To our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, to our sound engineer, Andy, to our show producers, Art and Faraji and Kim, and to each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. Did I mention our stellar sound engineer, Andy? I just want to make sure I got my bases covered. Remember, don't panic, organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you've been listening to Streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Quote, make it equal, end quote, while civil rights are being rolled back. A fundraiser for Carmelo Anthony, the Black teen charged with fatally stabbing a white student.